Welcome into our NFL Roundtable for Week 2 here on the Action Network podcast. Brendan Glasheen joined by two of my Action Network colleagues. We've got Brandon Anderson, who you can hear each and every week right here on this podcast with the NFL Recap episode, and First Thing Friday morning, Best Bets. That's coming your way this Friday as well for Week 2. And joining him, very special guest, Simon Hunter, professional gambler and co-host of our sister show, the Favorites Podcast, which, golf clap, became the top-ranked sports betting podcast in America. A top-ranking podcast, sports betting podcast in America this past weekend. Gents, thanks so much. We kicked this off last week with Evan Abrams and Chris Raybon. I'll throw you a softball first there, Simon. Biggest takeaway from the NFL season so far a week in. It can be betting-related, just top of the mind. What do you have?
The NFL should not get rid of the preseason. They should make it mandatory that starters play at least 2 series. I mean, it's so sloppy. I think we can all agree, just even between the coaching, the refs, all of it feels so sloppy. And it's just like this product, what we all wait for and we love so much, they got to readjust, right? I'm all for them not having them do 2-a-days, right? They've made the league in the offseason a little easier on the players. Totally agreed with it. But I think as the fans, we're paying for it now. And we have the numbers that back it up, right? I know this is like the least amount of touchdowns thrown for in week 1 and all this other stuff. So to me, that was definitely one that jumped out is, the defenses are getting better. And there's definitely been a change to the offensive schemes. But I just think the football has gotten so much sloppier than we're used to in the past. So that's definitely my one gripe I definitely have for this opening week.
Yeah, 35 touchdown passes in week 1, the lowest since 2018. 35 touchdown passes in week 1 from NFL quarterbacks. Brandon Anderson, top of the mind for you one weekend.
Yeah, I think it's that regression does not happen all at once, or maybe not at all in some cases. You know, we spent a lot of the offseason looking at, all right, well, the Bucs had outlier third down conversion, outlier third down defense. Well, guess what? 9 of 13 on third down, gave up 2 of 8 against Washington. Pittsburgh, they can't win 1-score games forever. Guess what? Pittsburgh won another 1-score game. Deshaun Watson, maybe he'll be good now. Nope, we'll get to him. Carolina, lots of those positive regression signs that they'd get better. There's still time. There's still 16 more games. Did not help all of our losing bets in week 1. So I think, especially for me, a future is better, especially looking at the big picture and where things should be heading over time doesn't necessarily mean it all got there in week 1. In many cases, it did not.
And as Simon hinted at, officials, players, the coaching, there's some red flags already in the coaching. I think last night for sure, offensively with the Jets. Arthur Smith still doing Arthur Smith stuff. We'll get to Kirk Cousins later as well. If you're new to Roundtable, again, we did our launch episode last week. This is more of a group therapy session. We're the voices, but we hope folks listening can also relate on a Tuesday and sit back and process their thoughts and let things digest. Simon, for the first time in modern NFL history, we are going to have no double-digit favorites in week 1 or week 2 in consecutive seasons. Your thoughts there? Is this the market getting sharper or a reflection of lower scoring? As we hinted at, only 35 touchdown passes from quarterbacks in week 1. Is it genuine parity? What's the lead thought there when I ask you that?
Yeah, it's sad times. I mean, even thinking about back in the day, like at one point, the Patriots were a 14-point underdog to the Rams. And a couple years later is the Giants were a 12, 13-point underdog in the Super Bowl to that same Patriots team. It's like, those days feel like they're so long gone. They don't even sound real when you talk about it now because it's so hard for the books to make a team a double-digit dog. And I think as the season goes along, if Carolina, like we talked about, if they really are this bad, they'll probably be our first double-digit dog, right? They look like they might be the worst team. I think they're already up to a 7-point underdog at home against a Chargers team that isn't very talented. So it's changed, but I do think what you touched on a little bit there is the legalization of it. The books have gotten smarter, and I think the GMs across football as well have gotten smarter, right? It's no more these terrible train wreck teams. Even the Patriots, who people thought were going to be this horrible team, they're not as bad as people perceive, right? The talent level is that high. If you just have some good coaching and you don't turn the ball over, usually these games can stay pretty close. So I'm definitely yearning for the old days where we used to get these double-digit dogs. I mean, one of my favorite bets ever was Ryan Fitzpatrick in Tampa Bay as a double-digit dog going against Drew Brees and the Saints in week 1, and they won outright. So those are the kind of bets I love to make, and they're just fun to bet. And we're just not going to get them anymore. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think the days of double-digit dogs here in week 1, unless the team is really that bad, we just won't see it anymore.
Yeah. Panthers, Chargers, as you mentioned, at home. They go to Vegas next. Bengals on the slate. But again, it's a home game for the Panthers. You really can't find a game for Carolina given their last place schedule where they're home or they're on the road until like Philadelphia way later in the season. Maybe the Giants would classify as that team. But even them, like they've got Cowboys home, Bengals home, Eagles home. So I don't know. Brandon, how would you answer that question, Brandon, as far as how we look at not a single touchdown plus dog, with the exception of New England and Cincinnati for consecutive weeks, no double-digit favorite in week 1 or 2?
Yeah, I mean, there is one. There is still Ravens 9.5 home against the Raiders. So we might still get that double-digit favorite here, depending on how that one moves. It's already risen a little bit. We do have 8 of our 16 games are 6-point favorites or longer. So it's not like there are only coin flip games left here. I got to be honest. I think this is just schedule randomness for the most part. Like Chargers, Carolina. What if the game's in Los Angeles instead of Carolina? Probably they're a double-digit favorite instead of a 6 or 7-point favorite. Niners, Vikings. What if the game's in San Francisco? They're definitely a double-digit favorite in that game. I think, too, this is part of what Simon talked about. This is the ugly no preseason carryover. Like, we know we get these low totals these first couple weeks. Low totals means not as big of a favorite. Like, that's just how the numbers have to work out. Like, we're getting bad offensive line play early while the Lions are kind of gelling and figure things out. That's leading to all that. It's just a lot of that to me. But I think more than anything, maybe just schedule randomness. We're seeing, like, look, last week we had 2 opening night games effectively with marquee teams. We didn't get to see the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Eagles or Packers play the Panthers or somebody terrible like that and get the huge spread. And I think that's a little bit too like NFL marketing, getting these big games on our eyeballs early. We got Buffalo, Miami Thursday night. We don't normally get that on a Thursday night starting out. We get like some terrible teams nobody wants to see to check them off the list right away. So I think it's just a little mix of all of the above. I'm not reading too much into it big picture just yet.
Okay. That's a total that's already come down a couple of points now. Buffalo, Miami, short week. Brandon talked about that in his hot read on the recap pod. The other big total is a playoff rematch. So speaking to your both of your points, I mean, Detroit gets the Rams at home, and they're going to play another team they faced in the playoffs last year in Tampa, and the Lions are a 7-point favorite at home. Let's look at Survivor here quickly. Last week, the Bengals turned out to be the Survivor pool trap of the season, wiping out a huge percentage of entries across the land, despite no double-digit favorites again. Is there another trap laid this week, Simon?
I think Brandon just talked about it. How about that Ravens 9? I mean, to me, that's a trappier line. I don't know if you'll remember. It might have been 2 years ago. I bet this Raiders team in Baltimore, and I believe they won outright in that game. So it's just, that's a fishy game because I don't think the Ravens are as good as people perceive, and their offensive line could struggle against that Raiders defensive line. But, between the coaching discrepancy, it's like Harbaugh, I put on a way higher standards right now than, what this Raiders team is doing, especially on the coaching side. So that's definitely a game most guys I've talked to this week, they circled that one, right? They're like, well, that's a nice spot to take the Ravens, right? Out of division, at home, after a loss. They kind of like that when I was like, that could be the trap line this week. So that one definitely jumped out to me just because I've had so many people reach out. And a couple other people asked, should I do the Chargers on the road against this team? And I was like, you know what? I might wait on the Chargers. I don't know if I'm gonna take them this week against Carolina, just because I think I drank too much of that Carolina Kool-Aid this offseason. I'm not overreacting to just one game, but man, is that enticing to take the Chargers there in that spot?
We will get to the Carolina Panthers and how this company looks like a bunch of silly people. But anyway, Brandon, is that a trap? Brandon, are you maybe a little smidge of you in on the island this week?
To me, the trap, I'm going a little bit bigger picture here. There are 7 games this week that are anywhere from a 6 to 7 point favorite. I think it's a teaser trap this week. I think this is a giant teaser trap waiting for you to say, oh, 6.5. Let's just tease that down half a point. Just got to get the win. There's a whole bunch of teams. We have almost half our games this week begging you to do that. We got the Niners and Chargers both on the road. We mentioned them already. The Lions, Chiefs, Cowboys, both at home. They're all 3 at home. I've got 2 more, but a stat first. Historically, in our Bet Lab system, if you just play 6 or 6.5 point road underdogs every single game, 54% against the spread. Doesn't sound like much, but that's across 350 games over a system like that. If you just did that every game, you're making profit. If you just play only 6.5 point road underdogs, 56% ATS. If you blindly played the money line in all of those games, so just every time you get the home or the road underdog 6 or 6.5 points, you're up over your lifetime 15% ROI on those games, just playing the money line game after game. And I think it's maybe a little bit, we are pushing those lines up just a smidge to get them into this teaser protection range to kind of entice you in. So here's the trap that I think specifically is set this week. Sunday night football, Houston home against Chicago, 6.5. Monday night football, Philadelphia home against Atlanta, 6.5. Boy, if that's not the get right teaser to end all teasers to, well, how did my weekend go? I know. Let me just get the Houston and Philadelphia wins. Piece of cake, no problem. Cash my check. One of those teams is going to lose because that's going to blow that easy get right teaser. And I tell you right now, Chad Millman, I think your Chicago Bears could pull off the upset in Houston. How about a little narrative switcheroo? Everybody loves CJ Stroud and Houston. What if everybody loves Caleb Williams? What if Caleb Williams shows up in the first big primetime spot? The Bears are 2-0. Jordan Love is hurt. Bears narratives, playoff swing. It's plus 250, 29%. I think the Bears have a better shot than that. I think those teams are a little closer than they seem, as bad as the Bears offense looked on this first game. So I'm watching out for teasers, and I think Chicago is one that could possibly blow it up.
Interesting. I mean, if you look at all four units, not including special teams, Chicago defense, offense, Houston offense, defense, that Bears defense, no joke. Indy kind of had their way against Houston, I thought, defensively. That was an up and down, high scoring game total in that one on Sunday night. Bears, Texans in Houston, good conditions too. I know Caleb had beautiful weather in Chicago, which he won't have much of, Chad, later in the year. 45.5 is the total on Sunday night. Simon, you alluded to this a few minutes ago. Public bets. We consider that the perception there is bets taking the majority of the tickets. Last season, some of you folks may or may not remember, was the best regular season for the public in our Action Network Bet Labs database, dating back to 2003. Last year, public bets went 24 games over 500 against the spread, 139, 115, and 9. So a $100 better would have finished in 4 digits, $1,063 profit. This year, Week 1 public side, 6-10 against the spread, adding the 10th loss, the New York Jets, last night in San Francisco. And you mentioned the legalization and that component. Will the books enact some revenge in 2024, or is the public getting sharper?
The public might be getting sharper, but it's also just, it's weird. Like that opening week, I think favorites went 13-3 straight up. Primetime favorites were 4-0 against the spread. Like, you know, the books, they do move these numbers to try to get, you know, more slanted towards the dog, right? I mean, that Rams line, I think, got up to 5.5, 6 at a couple of books right before kick. So it's not like they're not trying to adjust to all these publics doing what Brandon just talked about. Like the public, they chase that Sunday night. They've done it for 50 years. And they always chase the Monday night if it doesn't work out from the Sunday night, right? And they chase on the favorites. It's been profitable to them for the chase on these favorites. So, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do because I'm a dog better, right? And that's where I like to make my money. So it's really tough where it's like, you know, I'm trying to be more slanted towards taking some favorites in spots where normally I would not have taken that Lions team that Sunday night. But I kept thinking to myself, this is a fishy line. This shouldn't be as low as it is with all the injuries to that Rams front. And I felt like I had egg on my face in that fourth quarter where it's like, oh, Stafford did exactly what I thought Stafford would do. And then it turned out the bounce right. The public got lucky again, right? And the lines, the only way they could cover those crazy numbers wasn't for it to go to overtime and to have it work out that way. So I think it's just they've just been lucky. If I was a bookmaker, I wouldn't start firing people or over adjusting. I would stick to the plan and just stick to it where it's like you trust your numbers long term. They're going to give it back to you, right? The public, what they won today, they will lose tomorrow. And that's what I think those sports books are banking on.
Favorites 4-0 against the spread in prime time so far.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The Thursday night game, Kansas City, Baltimore, Friday, Eagles, Packers in Brazil. You mentioned the Sunday night game, Rams and Lions. And then, of course, last night. Brandon, you kind of hit on this with the potential of Chicago upsetting Houston. Anything to add there as far as the public becoming sharper?
Yeah, I mean, look, the public won last season. They lost the previous 5 straight seasons before last year. Our friend betting $100 in every public game, the past 5 seasons, he's down $6,258. So congrats on making your 1,000 back last year. You're still down $5K. Look, here's what I think about this. Remember the old thing about, like, if you put 1,000 monkeys at a bunch of typewriters, eventually someone will write Shakespeare? If a monkey flipped a coin on every game, if you just went 50-50 in every game, you would go 24 games over 500 over a season, about 1 in every 13 NFL seasons. This is just sheer random luck that we finally had this really strong season and things went that way. That's all it is to me.
Well said. I like the monkey reference. Something we did tease last week when we do this kind of episode, it's a great opportunity to dive back into futures and look at the current market, either strengthening a position or come back the other way on a position. It is only the start of week 2. I'll go to Brandon first on this. The dust has settled on the opening slate. Anything you're looking to add to your portfolio, Brandon Anderson, from a futures perspective?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a couple ideas here. So number one, I'm looking at Offensive Player of the Year, Devin Achane. This was one that we talked about as a sleeper, Brendan, on the awards pod. I like what I saw. He's 60-1 still at a book. He lined up a receiver, 15 out of the 37 snaps that he played. 11 times he was in the slot. Boy, isn't that a good way to get your lightning speed, like another lightning speed weapon, the ball. He had targeted 7 times, caught all 7 passes, 76 yards, 4 missed tackles on those. So even though he didn't run the ball, I think maybe this could be the new sort of wrinkle that Miami unveils, is getting Achane out into space. They put him and Mostert in the field both quite a bit that game. So, I love to have a piece of the Miami offense. So I don't mind getting a little bit more of that. I have 4 teams in my article up. I did an overreaction to every team from week 1. So I'm going to put 4 make or miss playoffs for you here in just the very quick case. I got Atlanta to miss the playoffs. Now, some of these are short-term futures. Atlanta's plus odds, plus 125 to miss the playoffs. They play Philadelphia, we just talked about, and then the Chiefs. They're going to be huge underdogs in those games. You can just short-term invest in Atlanta missing the playoffs, and if you don't like it anymore, you can just come back after these 2 weeks, and you're probably sitting at 0-3, and you can just come out that way. So Atlanta plus 125 to miss. Cincinnati plus 125 to miss. They got the Chiefs next. So how about that? 1 week future. Unless you think they beat the Chiefs in Burrowhead, you can just come back on the next side and probably get a plus odds on the other side, and you're out. You can just lock it in that way. Saints, minus 138 to miss the playoffs. Here's their schedule next. Dallas, Philly, at Atlanta, and in Kansas City. Those are, again, all 4 games. They're underdogs in those games. I think this is probably the shortest odds you'll get on them to miss the playoffs. And then this one is just a little bigger picture. I love Seattle, plus 144 to make the playoffs. Only 1 week of data, but number 1 DVOA defensively. I thought once they kind of settle past the early first half stuff, they look good. We'll get to the Packers injuries. The Rams have injuries. The NFC is pretty wide open. I like Seattle anyways. I don't think that number is going to stick around, especially if they get New England this week. And that was my look ahead and hot read. So Atlanta to miss, Cincy to miss, Saints to miss, Seattle to make our 4 playoff bets to look at right now.
Okay. Yeah, that Seattle defense, that looked as good as it's been in like 10 years since the Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman, Jamal Adams era, Bobby Wagner. Yeah, and look, Seattle, you gave out Seattle -3 as the look ahead, and you double down on the 3. The 3.5 is now out there for Seattle at New England. And then some tests kind of coming after that, right? They host Miami, then they go to Detroit for a Monday night spot, and then it softens the week after with the Giants. Simon, how about yourself? I know you're not a big futures guy, unless I'm wrong on that. But
you are. I unfortunately have to do a show all summer giving out futures every episode. It's brutal.
Okay. All right, my fault. In season?
I will if the price is right. Like,
all right.
The 49ers, that was a big miss by me. I thought this was an offseason from hell for them. I was like, you know what? They'll come out slow. I'll get a nice price on them later on because I just thought they would maybe struggle a little bit coming out the gates. I mean, it's business as usual. They just seem like they're just so far ahead of everyone in their division. Even a team like Seattle, I do like, that offensive line's terrifying. Like, I don't know if Geno's going to be able to last with that offensive line. The Rams, same thing, right? Their offensive line is a train wreck. And then Arizona, their defense is like 2-3 years away. Like that's not going to be a quick fix for that defense on that Arizona team. So terrible miss by me. And that's when, if you're like, well, the juice is so high now, you can pair it with the Chiefs then if you're really worried about that. I mean, the Chiefs, I've seen a couple of Chief lines up to minus 310 to win their division now. I still think that's too short. Like you watch their division, even the Chargers in a win, you're just like, okay, the Chargers get to 8 or 9 wins. That's a great season for that Chargers team. Are they really going to challenge this Chiefs team at 12, 11 wins? I can't see it. So to me, it's boring. It's same old, but it feels like the Lions are probably going to win their division. The 49ers are going to win their division. The Chiefs are going to win their division. Like, it just seems like business as usual with those top teams from last year. So was hoping for some craziness this season, but I think you can just tell week one, it's like, man, the coaching on these different teams that we're talking about here, that's the difference, right? Like you got Spags and Andy Reid on that Chiefs team. There's no worries. You got, Kyle Shanahan running one of the best run blocking schemes in all football that he took from his dad. That's just been working for 40 years. It's all good. Don't matter if it's McCaffrey or who they're going to put back there, right? So that was definitely a humble pie watching the game this year. It was just like, man, it doesn't matter that they've had guys holding out and their offensive line's terrible without Trent. It's all good when he's back and that offensive line's humming when they're run blocking.
Speaks to good coaching. I would add, too, on the Packers line. Well, the Packers, you mentioned the Lions probably winning the North. The good news for the Packers, they'll get Love back, and they only play one division game until November 3rd. They play that one game against the Vikings at home. That's their only division game. In theory, they'll have Love back at that point. But we'll see how he looks at that point and how he fares. Okay, so there's your futures outlook after 1 week. A couple more things, and we'll get out of here. We'd be cowards if we didn't discuss the Panthers, like at a deeper level. The audience has spoken. We're taking a bunch of crap for it. They're pissed off at Action Network for falling in love with Carolina. Not even just from a future standpoint. Like last week, 4.5 Panthers 4.5, and they got lambasted by the Saints. Simon, the Favorites podcast audience is absolutely livid about this.
Yeah,
because of how often you picked them last year on Sunday night. You both discussed this at length. Are the Panthers unbettable now?
I would say to Joe Public, that's a fan of our show, I say yes. If you don't want to bet them, I'm not going through hell anymore. Like it's unbelievable the hate I'm getting from the Panthers play when it's just one weekend where it's just like, my hope is everything just went wrong in that game when the team lost confidence, because it wasn't just Bryce Young. It was everybody, right? The defense, the secondary was terrible. I think their best player on defense, their star D tackle, might be gone for the season. Like it just all went really bad for that Panthers team. My biggest issue, like what I felt dumbest about with them was I definitely overlooked the Bucs for a couple of different reasons, right? I did think the Bucs would regress in a lot of ways, but I'm starting to realize in that division, they might be the most stable team, right? They brought everyone back. All these other teams are a little different. Even the Saints, right? The Saints had to bring in a new OC, and I don't think the Saints are as good as people perceive just because they beat up on the Carolina team. So the Panthers, the biggest miss for me was I thought that coaching would be such an upgrade for them, but they might just be one of the worst drafting teams in all of football, which I should have known better. And just because they spent over $100 million or whatever in the offseason doesn't mean they're going to correct all these holes that they have from drafting so bad. So really need the Panthers to win this week. I really need it. So if my fans don't want to bet it, but I'm going to give them out my money line round robin. The value is going to be too high in the Panthers to win outright, not to take them against the Chargers at home.
Okay. And your Derek Brown is out for the year, defensive lineman.
Right. He is out for the year. That's brutal.
Yep. Meniscus injury will require surgery. It will determine the exact timeline, but done for the year. Carolina on the money line right now is plus 240, home against the Chargers. And the irony is Dave Canales was on that Bucs staff, and Baker looked even better. Right? So, again, it's 1 week, but
1 week.
That's what we have to work with. Show to do today. Brandon, your thoughts? Are you abandoning the island? Have you called 911?
The Coast Guard has come in. We have exited the island. We swum for safety. We're out.
He's
here.
out.
We're out. The Bryce, to me, it's not just the result. Like I'm I'm a long shot better. I'm going to lose some games 47-10. Like, I can just go on with life after that. The process is bad, though, here. And I'm not saying the betting process, like the process of what I saw from Carolina, I'm out. I don't want any more of it. Bryce Young, number 2 in the NFL in average depth of target. What quarterback do you think you have on this team? Like, the only thing we think he might be able to do is throw some like short, accurate passes. That's the thing we want to be starting with. And he's like terrible at completion over expected, chucking it downfield. To who? Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson? This is the plan? Like, I don't know what you're doing here. You got time. You got time to get there. I haven't counted my division bet dead just yet because I still don't think the division is any good. I'm going to bet against Dennis Allen and Derek Carr as more than a field goal favorite every time. Like, I'm just going to make that bet. I'm sorry. We lost. It was bad. It's very bad. It's not the start that I would have wanted. Last year, Texans Island, they lost week 1, 25-9 against Baltimore. Very different to me. I liked what I saw from Houston in that game. I liked the underlying stuff. They were close till halftime. I felt better about the Texans against a really good Ravens team. Look how we saw how good they were. I don't think the Saints are that good, and the Panthers barely even contended for like 5 minutes in this game. This is not time to dig in your heels. I have to be out, but I will say this. 6.5 points against the Chargers like implies on a neutral field Chargers are 9 points better than the Panthers. In what world are the Chargers with nothing but a run game 9 points better than any team? Let alone like the Panthers. I don't know. So you don't have to bet the Panthers this week. It's fine, but don't bet the Chargers. Like, it's a Panthers or nothing spot for sure.
Okay. Look,
sounds like he's got 1 foot still on the island, 1 foot on the boat to me.
Look, if you go to Expedia and you find Anderson Island Resort, Seahawks, Texans, still good reviews. This one, though, might bring you down a tick, but who knows? Simon, I'm with you. There's still a smidge of his toes in on the sand in the Carolina Island. He's still interested. We'll wrap with this. And these last two topics kind of work together. Kirk Cousins coming off a major injury, he couldn't move. Now, when he has protection and he can plant his feet, sure, but the Michael Penix pick now makes a lot of sense after seeing Cousins' lack of mobility in and out of the pocket, mostly in it, because we know he's not a mobile guy. Big picture problem for the Falcons. How do we bet this team from here? I think the Penix pick deserves a little more credit. And then to kind of build off of that, and you guys can answer both here, just on the topic of quarterbacks that looked iffy, Deshaun Watson looks cooked. I didn't love I thought Aaron Rodgers was okay. I just think it was a very great game plan. What do you think, Simon, on those three guys? We'll start Cousins.
Yeah, I had these questions myself with Cousins. I kept reading from beat reporters that he was not moving right, and everything was really standing still after 3 drop and just throwing the ball from that position. It was just nothing. And he wasn't really putting weight on that back Achilles. So it's just like, okay, I'll take Penix then 80-1 and I'll take their under. And if I do want to bet them to win this division, we'll wait 3 weeks just in case they did lose this game. Now, they have the Eagles and Kansas City. Then I was going to get back on board. If Penix isn't the guy they're going to put in after that Chiefs game or before, I don't know if I'm going to get on board with Kirk Cousins, man. It don't look right. And I think we can all agree, like, even if you want to make fun of Kirk and say he's just a 500 quarterback, he was pretty good. Like, when it was all going well for Kirk, he was a great facilitator of an offense, and that was not who we saw in Atlanta. And, it's not going to get any easier, right? He's about to go against 2 really good defensive lines, and, Chris Jones, who goes up the middle, and Jalen Carter, who likes to go up the middle. That's got to be a dream for them, knowing this guy can't get out of the middle. So it's going to be pretty interesting. And, the Penix, I still think he's only down to 60-1 for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Did any of these quarterbacks really jump out to you guys and make you think that's not a great bet? I didn't think any did. So I still think there's a little bit of value there just in case that it isn't right for Kirk and they're like, what, let's just shut him down for the year and hopefully maybe next year he can get it right. So, it's all bad in Atlanta. Deshaun, I'm not going to waste time on him. I mean, I feel terrible for Browns fans. They don't deserve this. He might be totally washed. Aaron Rodgers is another guy where it's like, I agree with you. There was questions on their offense. He actually looked like he was moving all right. And I mean, he's still got a great arm. Like, there was a couple of throws that you're just like, man, I wish you weren't such a crazy person off the field, because you are just the best to watch when it's all going right. He's just so smooth. So I think good days are ahead for that Jets team. They ran into the best team in the NFC, and a team that was just totally prepared. Salah, we know his weaknesses. He got outcoached from that game, right? There's no doubt about it. His run defense was not up to tape and was not ready for that scheme that they got thrown at by the 49ers. So, Rodgers, if you're a Jets fan, of those three quarterbacks, I put him miles ahead of. I actually feel good about him. These other two guys, I got real questions about them going into the rest of the season.
Still, it's just from perception watching the game on TV. And even when they scored the touchdown, the Jets last night, the way Rodgers looks over to that sideline, it's just, is your priority being comfortable, or do you want to get coached? And I think it's more about being comfortable. Because I feel like that drive when they scored, how does Salah not look at it and go, all right, I think he likes me. He likes me. He likes me. We know Hackett and him are boys, but it's just cringy, the whole thing. But they didn't throw it first down like the whole first half. And then they had to turn him loose because they were trailing. But that Lazard throw, oh my God, left sideline. I'm like, oh boy, he can still do it. He's still that arm looks good when it's live. Brandon, okay, I'll let you chime in here. Cousins, Watson, Rodgers, quarterbacks that under a lot of scrutiny, and we'll start with Cousins, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, Cousins ran 0 play action the entire game. The Atlanta ran all but 2 plays out of either pistol or shotgun. Every single shotgun play is a pass. 81% of the pistol are run. You can't do that in the NFL. Like, that's such an obvious tell, and the teams obviously are picking up by it by the end. T.J. Watt's like setting up camp in the backfield. He's getting such an easy snap count off the ball. So, look, it's going to get better. Like, Cousins didn't play in the preseason, so this is the first chance. Like, we've seen that in week 1, the no preseason guys not going well here. But definitely, like I already mentioned, Atlanta missed the playoffs. Plus 125. I thought it was a bad number before the season, having it as strong as it did. It's been coming down. It was like plus 250, I think, back when Cousins first signed. I don't mind the Penix idea. I still saw a 75-1 this morning. In particular, you might be able to wait a little bit still here, because Cousins, not like he's getting benched this week. So you can almost like play the Atlanta missed playoffs and then come back with a Penix Rookie of the Year, because if they make the playoffs after being down 0-2, 0-3 to start out, like, Penix fits the formula. We talked about it with the awards, Brendan. Top 12 pick, quarterback, like that is the sort of guy that wins Rookie of the Year. Caleb Williams didn't look good yet. There's not a lot of options here. So I think that's a possibility. Check your book. If you still got Kirk Cousins just season-long unders out there, yards or touchdowns, like that is definitely a play that I would look for. Deshaun Watson, I think we're on Jameis watch. We're playing at Jacksonville this week. I have, on Bet Labs, I have trends set up. I have 14 trends on the Browns, 0 for the Jaguars in that game. So this is a very Browns-heavy spot, but man, is it going to be tough to try to bet Deshaun on the road against a defense that looked pretty good against Miami last week, Jacksonville. If it goes badly, maybe even by mid-game, the Browns after this game got Giants, Raiders, Commanders. If you don't think this is going well, I don't care how much you're paying the guy. Jameis is an actual NFL quarterback that could do some stuff on this team. I think he actually is very similar in style to Joe Flacco. Just let it rip down the field and let this defense do its thing. So I think we're on Jameis watch for sure. And then I am personally insulted that Aaron Rodgers is part of this trio of quarterbacks that we are discussing right now.
In my defense, I'm just trying to wrap the show, so I wanted to throw it all out.
I know, but in my defense, I'm just leaning into the bit here also. I am firmly dead center on Aaron Rodgers Island, RELAX. I thought he looked great on Monday night. He had all the timing throws with Garrett Wilson, got the free play touchdown, the classic Aaron Rodgers.
Classic.
Like, how many quarterbacks did you see this weekend that are definitely better than Aaron Rodgers right now? Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I don't know if there's any other guys. Like, I can make a case for other guys, but are definitely better. Joe Burrow sure didn't look better right now. I don't know. Like, Aaron Rodgers.
Give some love to Baker Mayfield, the best QB this week, right?
Yeah, Baker, right? Exactly. That's what we're looking at. Derek Carr. Like, this is the thing.
Yeah, but even Lamar as a passer wasn't great Thursday.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
To me, this
take it home.
This was clearly like Rodgers is good. If I like Rodgers coming to the season, I feel better, not worse after last night. He looked good. Compare it to Kirk Cousins, the Achilles injury twins. These are not twins. One guy can't move at all, can't make any throws. Rodgers looks good. The Jets defense stunk. The Jets run offense stunk. The coaching wasn't great. All that's not going to go anywhere, but guess what? Defenses stink against the Niners. 42-10 against the Cowboys last year. 42-19 against the Eagles. 33-17 against Miami the year before. They're 22-2 with Trent Williams over that span. Their actual MVP, not the running back, though, sitting out last night. The Niners are really good. Like, I'm not jumping off the island just because they lost to the Niners, who are all about timing and knowing what they're doing, and the Shanahan system works. In MVP odds, Aaron Rodgers is still behind Jared Goff and Tua Tagovailoa. Get all the way out of here. I'm doubling down 25-1. I still like the Jets. I like Rodgers more. MVP, I still think it's happening.
Love it. That's how we're going to end the show. Simon Hunter, thanks so much for coming by Roundtable. And you can catch Simon, of course, on the Favorites podcast with Chad Millman. Brandon Anderson will be back together on Friday morning for NFL Best Bets Week 2. My name is Brendan Glasheen. Hope you all enjoyed Roundtable Week 2 around the NFL. We'll join you again next week here on the Action Network podcast.